Okay, let's talk about shutter speed, aperture and ISO. Three things that make a photo from good to something that's amazing. There we go, that's better. Okay, where were we? Let's talk about shutter speed. Shutter speed controls so many aspects of photography. If you want to capture something moving really fast, it opens the shutter and closes it in 200 of a second or 250th of a second. If you want to capture something that like a waterfall and you want to introduce motion blur in that photo, you will put the shutter speed really low, but also you need to stabilize your camera, but we'll come to that later. So imagine you're trying to shoot something that's moving really fast across the frame, so you want to keep your shutter speed really fast so that the shutter opens and closes and captures the image spontaneously in action, but also not losing focus of that subject that's moving across the frame. Imagine you're taking a photo of a waterfall. You want to introduce motion blur into the picture. You want to get that flow of the water from a distance and flowing across the stream. How you do that? You decrease the shutter speed. Even one by over 1/2 of a second would let the shutter remain open for that period of time and would let that light in and capture that flow of the water. I'll show you an example right here. See how that water flows across from a distance and it looks amazing? That's because you had a lower shutter speed set on your camera while capturing that particular image. The next big thing when it comes to camera fundamentals is aperture. Aperture is measured in f-stops. The wider the aperture, the more lights it lets in. The narrower the aperture, more everything in your frame's in focus, but it lets in less light as well. So the wider you keep your aperture open, the more lights it lets in, and it also creates a beautiful bokeh behind your subject. The bokeh does not only depend on the aperture, but it is one of the key factors when it comes to how shallow your depth of field is. The aperture also narrows the depth of field. In turn, it keeps the foreground and the background both in focus. So if you're capturing a wide subject like a mountain vista or a bunch of people standing together, you want to keep your aperture really small so that less light gets in and hits the sensor. Okay, the next thing we need to talk about is the ISO. ISO basically means the sensitivity of your not the sensitivity, that's not how you say it. How sensitive your sensor is to the incoming light. I need to set this camera down. Hey, how sensitive your sensor is to how much light it's coming in determines how bright or how dim that photo is going to appear. So imagine if you're shooting in a really low light condition, you need your sensor to be more sensitive to the light. Otherwise, your photo would just look dim or it won't be as bright. You won't be even be able to see your subject very well. ISOs in some cameras range between 80 to about 12,500 and in some really expensive cameras till 25,600. But by also increasing the sensitivity, again with the sensitivity, by also in making your sensor more sensitive to the light by increasing your amount of ISO to making it like go 5,000 during the night or even during the evening, you're making your photos more full of noise. The more sensitive your sensor is to the light, the more noise you're going to be introducing into the picture. And sometimes you want that, but most of the time you wouldn't. So in conclusion, you need to find a balance between both shutter speed, aperture, and how sensitive your sensor is to the light or the ISO. That was a loud car. So how do I find a perfect balance between all three? If I want Shiro, by the way, say hi to Shiro. Shiro, sit. Shiro, sit. There we go. So if I want to make him stand out, first thing I'll do, I'll increase the aperture by a little bit, not by much because I want to separate him from the background a little bit. Then I'm gonna increase my shutter speed so that the picture's not overexposed by just a little bit, and then I'm gonna raise the ISO just a tiny bit so that everything in my subject, every part of the subject is brightly visible so that you can see it in the picture. And then when I'm ready, so once you find the balance between ISO, aperture and shutter speed, you'll find that your pictures are turning out to be better than what you were taking before. It does take a little bit of a practice, but once you're used to it, you'll be able to see a scene and be able to set the settings on your camera very easily, and it becomes like a muscle memory. You'll be able to see a scene and be able to know what the shutter speed should be, what the ISO should be set, if that the lens is the perfect lens for that particular scene or not. That's it for me today. If you like the video, hit the like button below, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see